Good morning and happy Mother's Day. It's beautiful to be here and I'm honored. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time and I'm grateful for the opportunity and I thank you all who've made it possible. I invite you just to pause for a moment and open yourself up to the Spirit while I pinch myself that this is real. When was the last time you felt awe? Maybe it's when you heard that talented musician, saw the double rainbow, watched the very cool and clever TikTok video, saw the skier do a backflip, or heard your grandchild speak and think, she is brilliant. I have been trained to be CBS. Clear, brief, and specific. So here are 3 words to keep in mind as we dig into this gospel story: awe, abundance, and advocate. In today's gospel, we hear from John. John is a different writer compared to Matthew, Mark, and Luke. They tend to write from a similar space, which I would say is a head space. I think John writes from a heart space. At the Last Supper in John's Gospel, he washes the disciples' feet. The other Gospel writers establish the Eucharist. The next chapter of John, chapter 15, Jesus speaks of being the true vine, and we are the branches. This imagery is not in Matthew, Mark, or Luke. I am the light of the world and the good shepherd, also only in John. The setting for this gospel is Jesus' last night with them, the Last Supper, and he's given what's called his farewell discourse. And as they were reclining, he was sharing with them what was to happen. Jesus was trying to prepare them for a life without him. They couldn't hear this, nor could they see this. I imagine for some of them they were together for a long time. A world without someone you love, no one wants to imagine that. How do you even prepare for that? I'm thinking they were shutting down. He was saying to them, I will not leave you orphaned. I am sending an advocate that will be with you always. They certainly would have heard the word orphan. They would have known their history. Orphans in the Old Testament were defenseless and oppressed. Numerous times in the Old Testament we hear about God's favor to orphans. In Jeremiah 7, verse 6, God says, if you no longer oppress the alien, the orphan, and the widow, and if you no longer shed innocent blood in this place, or follow after other gods to your own harm, only then will I let you continue to dwell in this place, in the land I gave your ancestors long ago and forever. Orphans were in the same category as widows, strangers, and the poor, basically folks without resources. Jesus, they knew, had been teaching and lifting up this group. The disciples had witnessed Jesus helping the marginalized. Heck, he even broke bread with them. He protects them. If we go back to the Last Supper, Jesus has given instructions, or rather he's trying to prepare his friends for what is coming. Jesus was offering himself to us, all of us, freely in the form of an advocate. He was sending the Holy Spirit. When I was pregnant with my first child, my mother-in-law told me she was only able to iron one shirt a day, and she spent the rest of the day consumed with the baby. She vaguely alluded to an awe that was indescribable. Mind you, this is a woman who had 26 hours in her day and was super active. How could she only get one shirt ironed? Once my first child was born, I got it. There's this awe that transcended me. I was holding the miracle of life. This was and is awe. I remember sitting there holding him and being totally in the moment. Awe is like this. It is something you're not prepared for. It is something that surprises you. It is something that brings you into the present moment. It is something that says, you are exactly where you belong. When I told my mom I was going to be preaching on Mother's Day, her first question was, what are you going to wear? So my friends, I'm wearing a dress to honor her. And you can put a little makeup on. My mom is one of abundance. Everything about her is abundant. As a child, my school lunches were full, tons of snacks, and the fattest PB&Js you ever saw. But she is also abundant with her time. She always picks up the phone when I call, even when she's in an appointment, and she will whisper, "Is everything okay? Can I call you back?" When my mother-in-law was seriously ill and I was the caregiver, I called my mom, and she listened and listened and listened. My mother fully gives. So I've mentioned two words, abundant and awe. Now, how does an advocate arrive? Jesus was sending an advocate. What is an advocate? The Greek translation for this word is paraclete, and it literally means called alongside. Jesus was the first advocate. This word derives from a legal term, a defense attorney. It means spokesperson, mediator, intercessor, comforter, counselor. This advocate will be with you always, Jesus says. I will not leave you orphans. He knew we needed help, and he essentially said to his friends and us, I got you. We need to be sustained and supported in a way that God only can. Later in John 14, verse 26, Jesus defines the Paraclete's role. The Holy Spirit, whom the Father will send in my name, will teach you everything and remind you of all that I have said to you. Teach and remind. So this Spirit, an advocate, is here with awe and abundance. What does an advocate look like in real life? I'm involved in many groups. One helps folks who are in immediate need with things like food or rent. Another group does what I call advocacy, working with local governments and the community to effect change. During the height of the pandemic, I was sitting in a meeting with members of the advocacy group and some Sunnyvale city staff. We were discussing housing plans for the next 8 years. I then shared that the pandemic is really hurting folks. Jobs have been lost, hours have been cut, and this is affecting their housing stability. People in Sunnyvale are housing insecure, i.e., really struggling to pay their rent. I judged after sharing that this fell on deaf ears. I left the meeting feeling defeated. A week later, one of the members of our advocacy group said to me that my sharing really affected her, and she did not know things were that serious. She heard me. Advocacy works like teaching, and teaching takes time. Most of us don't learn calculus immediately. It takes time and practice. Advocacy also requests that we stop and notice. We must pause to ask ourselves, what am I being shown? The advocate Jesus sends, I imagine, is one that gently teaches and comes exponentially with abundance and awe. It is always with us. It is a sense of awe, like knowing I was exactly where I was meant to be. An abundance, like being freely offered in no scarcity. I know that advocate Jesus sends is filled with awe and abundance and is here. God, Jesus, Spirit is love and always with me. It is free. All I have to do is stop and feel it. The advocate sustains. The advocate heals. That's the awe, and that's the abundance offered for us all. So here's a practice that helps me notice. Raise your right hand and put it over your heart and close your eyes. And think of all those people who led you here today. Think about the people who comforted you when you were sick. Think about the people who cheered you on and said, "You got this." Think about the person who listens to you as you pour out your heart. Think about the person who hugs you and says, "You're enough." Now open your eyes. This, my friends, is the power of love, this feeling. And I would say it's the advocate revealing herself with awe and abundance. Your homework, or spirit work, could be to try this practice at home, or maybe stop and notice this week where the Spirit is dwelling and what it is teaching you. Be well.